How about like this? Is that all right? Like that?
Yeah, okay. So, Dad, where did you live after college?
I lived in a teepee.
Now, how did you find the land to put it on?
We heard, my friend and I, who we were going to live in the teepee and build it, we heard about a farmer who let people live on his land about 10 miles from where we went to school.
Okay.
In Jericho, Vermont.
So it was nearby. Now, how did you build it? How did you figure out how to build it? Like, who taught you? How did you learn?
There's a book actually called The Indian Teepee, which gives you really details of how to build it really, from scratch. So that we followed the book.
Was it really difficult?
It took a while because, the book follows Indian tradition, and we had to find trees that we could use for the poles. You need 16 poles, and they have to be really straight. So you have to find a pine because pine is light, and you have to find these in an area where there are a lot of trees, because part of Indian tradition is not to cut down a tree unless it's in an overcrowded situation. So even though we might have found a perfect tree that was straight, if it was all by itself, we wouldn't use that tree.
And besides pine trees, what other materials did you use to build the teepee?
Besides the pine trees, we needed certain equipment to prepare the tree, like a rasp and another thing that you use to get the bark off. And so there was equipment like that we needed, and also rope to tie the ends of the poles, and of course the covering, which was made of canvas.
Okay, so another question: how did you deal with the bad weather, the weather conditions?
Well, a teepee is made with flaps, and you have 2 poles that you use to close up the teepee in like rainy weather, so that the rain doesn't come in. And also, you probably all seen how the poles stick out from the end of the teepee, and rain does gather on those poles. But the great thing about a teepee is that the water that does catch onto those poles runs straight down the pole to the ground and doesn't drip off if you have really smooth poles. And an old Indian saying was that the smoother your poles, the luckier you'd be in love.
It's interesting. But the rain was easy to deal with, but what about when it was winter and snowing?
Yeah, a friend of ours who gave us the idea too for the teepee lived in Montana year round, and he put a wood stove inside the fire, in the middle where our pit was. But we decided that in Vermont, when it got real cold, that we moved out of the teepee for a couple of months during the coldest weather.
Right. And what about how you bathed? Because obviously a teepee doesn't have plumbing.
Yeah. We were lucky to have the farmer's land had a really beautiful stream on it. It was called Brown's Trace Stream, and it was really cold water because it was water coming mostly off the mountain. But it was water that we bathed in and swam in, and that was what where we bathed. Yeah.
And what did you do for food?
Well, we went to mostly from, we didn't hunt food or anything.
Obviously.
Yeah, we bought food. We could cook in the teepee or outside the teepee, on fires and like that, or just buy our food in town, or
Right.
eat at Dunkin' Donuts.
All right. Now, Here's an interesting question. Did you ever have any encounters with wild animals?
We were in a meadow, big meadow the farmer had, and there weren't really too many wild animals there. We had 2 dogs that lived, that we had that were with us in the teepee. So I think they kept away a lot of the animals. There was one time that a bear was in the area, and we had to kind of scare it away, but it wasn't really that big of a deal.
How did you scare away the bear?
Well, I think I remember using one of the poles to kind of get it to go, and it did. It wasn't that bad,
That could have been an ugly situation, though.
Yeah, he might not have been born if I was killed by the bear, right?
Yeah. And the last thing, besides the cutting down of the pine trees and how you smooth the trees, were there any other Indian traditions or conditions that you followed while making the teepee or living in it?
Well, I think we always tried to be good to the environment while we were doing it, and not wasteful of things. And I know that one tradition we had is when we put up the poles, there was a certain dance we did that was kind of cool. So anyway, other than that, I don't think there was that much tradition. No, it was a cheap place to live. Free rent.
So if anyone doesn't know where to live after college, there's always a teepee option.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Dad, for doing this. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Teepee man.